Hey folks, we're just given a few seconds up here at the top for Zoom to let everybody in before we get started here. If you are already in tonight's webinar with us, you can open up your chat window and find some information about tonight's readers and about how to purchase tonight's featured book, New Yorkers. All right, good evening and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Chelsea from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Craig Taylor, presenting his new book, New Yorkers, the city and its people in our time. He'll be joined by some wonderful local actors reading pieces from the book, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Craig, all of tonight's guests, and the team at W.W. Norton for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make this space for conversation and connection. Now I have just a few housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they cannot see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you can see a count of your fellow attendees at the top of your Zoom screen. There are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. That's a great way to show your appreciation for the author and to interact with your fellow attendees. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And importantly, tonight's featured book, New Yorkers, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. And we have a special offer for those who order online by March 27th. If you order New Yorkers for shipping or pickup using the link I'll drop in the chat in just a bit, W.W. Norton will mail you a gorgeous poster of the book. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. Our featured author and MC for tonight is Craig Taylor. He is the author of the best-selling Londoners, as well as 1 million tiny plays about Britain and Return to Akenfield. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, The Globe and Mail, and McSweeney's. He lives in Western Canada. His new book, New Yorkers, features 75 remarkable New Yorkers, their fascinating true tales arranged in thematic sections that follow Taylor's growing engagement with the city. Craig is going to start us off with a few words about the book, and then tonight's performers will be reading from the book, and after that, Craig will be talking with all of you. Craig, please take it away.
Thanks so much, and welcome to everyone tuning in from around the world. Thank you for being here to celebrate this book, and thank you especially to all the actors you're going to be hearing from. New Yorkers, the book took about 6 years to write. I spoke to around 200 New Yorkers while I was living in the city from 2014 onwards. 75 of these New Yorkers appear in the book. Some of those very people are listening right now, so to them I say thank you for your eloquence. I knew at the beginning that speaking to so many New Yorkers would allow me to do practical things like find out where to find the best bagels in New York, but I really had no idea at the beginning of this project that it would become such an education on other things, on how to live fully, on how to live with compassion, on how to exist in a city. New Yorkers cannot help but be resilient. I think we know that after the 20 years that have just passed. The great thing about New York is that on its streets, you are given access to the most extraordinary people in the world. You gain a kind of proximity to greatness. That's certainly something I've been missing in the last year of COVID. This year has been really tough for the city, for the individuals there, for some of the interviewees in the book, some of whom struggled with COVID over the course of the year. Some have even faced it down in hospital rooms. Dan, I'm looking at you right now. So I'm hoping that this book will serve as a real celebration of the resiliency of New York. But not just that, also of the zaniness of New York and the beauty of the city. The book covers all of those topics and more. Inside the book, you'll be introduced to so many great people, so many people that are close to my heart. Window washers and healers and nannies and doctors and rappers and 911 operators and activists. It's a city like no other, and all of these people are waiting to meet you in the covers, between the covers of this book. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Norton, my publishers, especially my editor, Matt Weiland, who helps create these books. I'm always stunned at the amount of work that he puts into them. He's really the best in the biz. So at this kind of event, I have to thank him, and thanks to Elizabeth Riley and Meredith McGinnis and Hunia Siddiqui as well at Norton. Thank you too to the New York City theater community. It's been such a tough year for actors in the city, and we get to draw tonight from some of the best talent in the world. That's one of the great things about New York. And I'm really honored to share this reading with people who are going to share their talents and read out sections of the book. So here's the deal. I sound like Joe Biden. Here's the deal. Each actor has a bio on the Greenlight webpage. So I'd like you to all go there and read through the extensive bios of these talented people. I can't do it all right now, but trust me, they're some of the best in the biz. Thank you to the members of Elevator Repair Service. Thank you to the other actors who are here. And thank you to Greenlight Bookstore, who hosted my last launch in 2012 when things were a lot different. So tonight, today, this morning, wherever you are, we'll be having 8 readings from the 8 actors, 8 short sections of the book. 7 of the actors will be reading the words of their fellow New Yorkers. The last actor is reading his own words. He is the man in the book. I will quickly introduce each. This is a book about voice. It's a book about noise. It's a book about chatter. It's a book that it's alive with the sounds of the city. So sit back and let's get started. I'm sure you're all sipping your Manhattans. We're going to start, first of all, with Frank Sr., who kicks off the book. He's a voice in the book. At the very beginning, he is blind, he's a singer, and he knows everything about the smells of the city. And this piece will be read by the very talented Hubert Point-Du Jour. Hubert, take it away.
Thanks, Craig. Craig, you can hear me okay, right? Just want to, okay. My seeing eye dog and I will walk from 125th Street down to Houston Street. The sound of children in the park tells me what time of day it is. Maybe it's afternoon. You can hear that in the kids' voices. Morning, you can hear the horns, the hustle. Nighttime, you don't hear trucks as much. The traffic is lighter. Now, if you just drop me out of the sky, maybe I wouldn't know if it's rush hour in the morning or in the evening, but I know it'd be one of those. Then you go by the feel of the sun. When I'm walking, construction is the hardest thing because you can't hear. You got to find your way. You got to fight your way. I don't even know what I passed. The cane is hitting everything, and I'm walking much slower. You have to concentrate that much more with the cane. So when you're trying to concentrate and you hear jackhammers and trucks and banging and you smell the construction, your concentration's gone. With the dog, I don't have to worry about that stuff. We just breeze by. When I pick my dogs, when they match me up, I always make sure they give me a dog that can move fast. I need speed. Don't give me a dog that can't go any faster than a stroll. I want to move. We get on Fifth Avenue and we just move, man. She loves going in and out of the people. You feel yourself going around the people. She's shooting up in the corner. Boom. The light changes and she's gone. The people are just stepping off the curb. I'm hearing them behind me saying, oh, that's a pretty dog you got there. I'm already by them. I'm moving faster than New York. If I'm walking with the cane, I'm walking very slow. So that's when I feel New York going by me. When I go to another city, I feel like I could slow down. I like it because I don't feel like I'm competing. In New York, I'm just in it. As we walk, I hear the different kinds of neighborhoods. Black people turning into white people, Spanish people turning into Black people, you know? And then you got the sounds of the languages, the vendors, the different ways that the different cultures sell their stuff. I used to be able to pick out if someone was biracial. They just had a texture in the voice and a clarity in the voice and a thickness in the voice that would say, this is both. Now it's harder to do because everybody's mixed now. The New York voice has changed because everybody's so mixed races, mixed cultures. When it was more New Yorkish here, you could hear the different parts of where you're from. Brooklyn had this thing. The Bronx was close, but it was a different kind of A sound, you know? Black people had their own flavor. Now I couldn't tell a Bronx guy from Manhattan or Brooklyn. You can smell gas leaking from buildings. You can smell tenement, the smell of mold. But then you can go to Central Park and smell the flowers, smell the grass, the dew. If you go to Smoke on 105th Street, you can smell the instruments in there. Horns have like, I don't know how you say, a dry saliva smell. A trumpet smells different than a sax. The trumpet, you smell more. A guitar has a smell like the strings, the wood. In Hell's Kitchen, you'd pass all the railroad apartments and tenement buildings and people sitting on the stoop playing checkers or dominoes. You could hear dominoes. You could hear the checkers. And then you could hear who's playing them because Spanish people love dominoes. You hear them talking Spanish, but banging the dominoes, boom, boom, boom. You hear them slamming the checkers. They'd be all over the stoop. They'd be sitting on a car. I used to go up to the Empire State all the time. On the top, you're dealing with wide open sound. It's got a peacefulness about it. I always go to the pier down by the seaport to sit by the river and listen to the boats, listen to the water. It's so beautiful. But you go on a cruise somewhere on a real beautiful water that's real, and you realize how dirty this smells. You're like, oh shit, it's atrocious. I've been living in the city all my life. When Times Square was, you know, the dump. When you got off the bus at Port Authority, it smelled like sex. I used to say, this is what tourists have to come into? I would freak out. It just smelled nasty. Sex, groin and hair and underarm, you name it, that's what it smelled like. That's how bad Times Square was. It was horrible. I didn't know it till I'd go away and come back. Then you'd say, wow, this city stinks. Everybody has a body chemistry, and everybody tries to bring it out with various oils, colognes, perfumes, pheromones. I don't remember the names, but I know what I'm smelling. I love vanilla. I love wood-aged colognes. And in the summer, all the sunscreens going at you. I met this girl who had no smell. She doesn't wear any cologne or perfumes. So when she walked by me, I said, I don't get it. I don't feel you. She goes, because I don't wear anything. It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable feeling to walk next to someone who had nothing. She was almost a ghost. Weird thing happened to me the other day. I was standing on Madison and 23rd. I come up to the corner and the dog kind of like, I felt her head move someone over a bit so we could fit in. So I said to the person, oh, damn, just to say something, because I knew we hit him a little bit. This is 23rd. I mean, I knew it was, but I was just letting him know I knew we made contact. And he goes to me, what are you, blind or something? I started to say, fuck you, but said, yo, man, what do you think I got the dog for? He goes, oh, you got a dog? I'm blind too. He said, I was going to ask you to help me cross the street. I said, I could do that. I can help you across the street, man. He grabbed my arm, held it tight, and we went across.
Thanks, Hubert. That was terrific. That
Thank
was
you.
the voice of Frank Sr. from the start of the book. Let's move along to our second reading. The next voice you'll hear is a man named Itamar Kubovi, who is a dance producer. And Itamar was fascinating because he told me a little bit about how New Yorkers have to move, which is very important in the city. So now I'll pass the microphone to Scott Shepard. Scott, take it away.
In New York, you're in a million situations a day where you have to adjust your body to the reality of the situation. And in and of itself, that's choreographic. You're improvising some kind of physical choreography, and it becomes more forced because there's not a lot of room. So getting into an elevator, getting into a subway, making your way through a subway turnstile, negotiating who's going to go through the exit, that weird moment where you're like, no, me, no, you. And then you think about race, age, color, privilege, money. There are these weird little political dances about how to quickly negotiate your way through. A big source of choreographic inspiration comes from constraint, literally physical constraints. If you have to pass through a narrow space, you're going to twist your body to do that for a completely practical reason. You just want to keep going, you know, or you want to riptide across a group of people walking down the sidewalk, and you've got to have some sort of a riptiding strategy. You can't just barrel through. You have to be like, excuse me, or move away, or there's a spot. I'm just going to dart there and wait, and then I'm going to wait for my next spot. So all that becomes almost inevitable. And I think part of what's interesting in the city is that the theatricality of New York is an inevitable thing. It's not like someone decided to do it because they had like a funny character. It's theatrical because there's no other way to solve the problem other than to declare what you are and what you need and what space you're going to need to do it. And then to hope that you're able to actually get that. Yesterday, I was at the coffee shop at a coffee shop on the Lower East Side getting a cup of coffee. And one of the guys who worked there was one of these barista-ish, fancy, it takes them too long to make your cup of coffee because it's good kind of thing. He was dancing back there. And I don't just mean a grace. In fact, it was quite awkward, but everything he did, he reached, lunged, then put the cup down, click, 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 and turned around. Everything became this kind of routinized dance for him that was both a performance for the clientele, but also a performance for himself. He was making his own space. He was decorating his own space. And you sensed that the person that was most being served by his dancing was him. Like that's what kept him engaged. I sat there with a friend and I was like, look at this guy. Every move from rinsing the thing to the this of the thing to the that of the thing, it was almost worth going to watch this guy do this weird dance because it's just such an odd kind of way of making a cup of coffee. There are constantly situations that force this. Density is always the one reason. Elevators become a very big choreographic endeavor. Busy sidewalks are obviously ones. When you have a certain responsibility for space that you need to preserve in order to get something done, you very often need to change your approach to the choreography. If you need to carry something somewhere, or you need to transport something somewhere, or even if you need to take a child somewhere, or you need to take 3 children somewhere, suddenly your whole sense of yourself as a body expands in some imaginary way to envelop the added responsibility of what you have. And this poses a whole new set of considerations about what the most effective way to move around the city is going to be. you not only have this kind of personal choreography, but there's also a molecular choreography. Sometimes we're part of a larger thing that needs to address its movement now as a larger organism. You want to stay close to the people that you trust, and you want to stay away from people that you don't. And that has a whole influence on what that flow is like. We think often of the challenges from a choreographic point of view as being really dependent on what it is that you're trying to move, more than on the sort of constitution of the person who's moving. Because in a way, the river washes you along, and you can be a better swimmer or a worse swimmer, but the speed of the river is the speed of the river. One of the things about New York's anonymity and cruelty, and in a way, beauty, is that it won't ever stop for you. It won't ever stop. You can come, you can go, nothing matters to the city. That's one of the great things about it. When things matter a lot to you, sometimes it's nice to be in a world that doesn't care. It's relieving.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you. So that was Itamar Kubovi, who was a dance producer, speaking about the choreography of the city performed by Scott Shepard. And next we'll just go straight into dentistry, I guess. Next up, we have the words of Arthur Kent, who is a dentist on the Upper East Side. Very charming fellow who has dealt with a lot of teeth over the years, and a lot of different types of teeth, as you'll soon hear. So this piece is read by Ben Williams. Take it away, Ben.
My dad owned my dental lab, and unfortunately he passed away about 16 years ago, but I still have patients that have crowns that he made. We'll be doing an exam and I'll think, my dad made that 30 years ago. So there's a connection. And every now and then one will fail and I'll take it out and it'll be in my hand. And I'm like, wow, this was in my dad's hand. It gets a little spiritual for me. I respect everyone's time. New Yorkers' time is the most important commodity they have, and I respect that. I'm not one of these guys that books every 20 minutes. I used to work with a gentleman in the city, and he booked, I think, quarter hour appointments, even knowing that some of the appointments were an hour and a half long, and patients would sit in the waiting room for hours. It would make me nervous, because to me, that's showing a disrespect for those people's time. In New York, you get a lot of grinding. You get cracked teeth, TMJ issues, joint issues. Grinding is one of the worst things that you can do to your teeth, because the forces that your jaw exerts are stronger than any other force in your body, and you'll get cracked teeth. It'll cause root canal on virgin teeth sometimes, or on crowns. You saw a lot of people having TMJ issues after 9/11, clenching their teeth because everyone's stressed out of their mind. During the financial meltdown, you'd see these brokers coming in and they're like, why are the insides of my cheeks getting all yellow? It was from fatty deposits. It's just a way of their body dealing with stress. When the garment center was imploding because everything went overseas, you'd see these garment center guys coming in with cracked teeth, or they're biting on pencils or ice. In 2007, 2008, that was huge, huge. People grinding their teeth, just clenching and grinding their teeth. You were seeing cracked teeth. You're seeing ground down teeth. You're seeing things called aphthous ulcers, which is when you run down and you're going to get sometimes an ulceration in your gums, which hurts like hell. You got to stay away from certain spicy foods and that kind of thing. You'd see neglect. You'd see people not wanting to come in because they don't know how they're going to pay. There was a slowdown in dentistry. A lot of people lost their jobs, and with that, they lost their insurance. And even though we don't accept insurance, they get reimbursed a certain amount of money. At the end of the day, there's no out-of-pocket expense. Now, they don't have that insurance. They're canceling the appointment, putting the appointment off. Instead of coming in 4 times a year, they'll come in twice. Or instead of coming in twice, they'll come once. When they come back, if they come back, there's so much more that's going on in their mouths because of neglect. When I first started, I had a patient who was a phenomenally successful finance guy. He was in his 20s and was probably worth a couple $100 million already at that point. I think he was a bond trader. This guy's teeth were ground to like pegs. I said, you got to learn how to relax. And he said to me, you don't get as successful as I am if you relax.
Thank you, Ben. The words of Arthur Kent, the Upper East Side dentist, a warning to us all. So next, we'll swing down to the sidewalk and talk to one of the great dog walkers of New York City. I met Andrea in Brooklyn. She was the dog walker of a friend. And I had no idea the world of dog walking, the competitiveness of dog walking, and just the general sense of hustle that you have to have in the city to make a small business go. So this next reading, Andrea Pollack, dog walker, will be read by Maggie Hoffman. Maggie, please take it away.
I know every animal that gets walked during the day. I know about every single visit, every single one of them. I know every single dog we have, every one of them, and we have about 200. I need to be able to kind of dictate what to do or what not to do. Essentially, I guess, I'm the alpha dog. A doorman recently said to me, you know, don't take it personally, but you guys just walk dogs. But we literally are helping these people live better lives. And we help these dogs to not get given up because a lot of these people work so damn much. I'm going to work 15 hours. My dog is still in a crate. Oh my God, I have to work, or I can't go to this meeting, or I can't have this date. One client that I have, I think he's in his 20s. He lives in a penthouse. He's one of those kids who made tons of money and doesn't know what to do with it. He has like 7 couches because he can't figure out which one to keep, you know. At one point, apparently one of the dog walkers that he had before brought up some issues with him. So he fired them. So now he hired us. I'm just like, hey, dude, this is what you have to do. I'm not going to fluff it for him, but you know, I'm constantly getting calls like, hey, get my dogs. I'm going on 3 dates. He tells me all his personal stuff. I know all about his dating world now. And I just walk his dog. Does this woman know she's number 3 for the night? He's like the Bachelor, but can't deal with the responsibility. I get a cheese Danish every single day because I have no time for anything else in the morning. I usually do the morning walks because I don't want to burn out my dog walkers, so I burn myself out. And while I'm doing this, I'm sending schedules for everyone to make sure, because sometimes so much has changed since a few hours before. I have to make sure I send everybody their schedules before I even get to my first dog, to make sure that everybody is on time, to make sure that everybody has everything. Every appointment that they go to visit a dog, they have to send me a photograph and an update on what happened. There's not one appointment that goes by without me knowing about what happened to it. The photographs are really, really good. At this point, I think I've downloaded like 15,000. We see our photographs on people's Christmas cards all day long. We send photographs and an update. She took a quick walk out, peed, had a nap, pooped, had a snack while I freshened her water. All is well. But then we created this monster. A few people are expecting these things now in the middle of their work, or I get, hey, Andrea, what happened to Peanut? Is he okay? And then, what do you think of Peanut? And what do you think we should do about blah, 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 blah. And now I'm finding out from this one woman who's pregnant. She's like, Andrea, what do we do? We're pregnant. I don't know. I just hired a guy who's a comic who's going to be really, really funny. I can only imagine the stuff he's going to be writing because he's so funny and observant. Sometimes he speaks in the dog's voice. He is very good at becoming the dog. He does it really well. And it's what makes people want to work with him. But I think people love me as their alpha dog. They trust me with everything. While I'm walking a dog with one hand, I'm texting with my other hand, I'm responding to new inquiries, and I'm also invoicing while I'm on the subway because, you know, I'm always behind on invoicing. So the day essentially turns into about 4 hours of really intense. Are you there yet? Are you not there yet? You're not there yet? That never ends. It's not just traffic you've got to watch for, and not just people that hate dogs. It's the other dogs. It's like gang warfare. You'll see somebody who will walk maybe 7 Frenchies, or there's one guy who walks all brown dogs together. You have to worry about other dog walkers because now we have these packs of dogs walking on the streets. You have to dodge them, or else you have these brawls. Dogs are pack animals. That's how they protect themselves. So now we have one dog that's just going bonkers, and then they all go crazy. It's wiped me out a few times. We have so much stress. I mean, just to live here, you miss one step and it's over, you know? Skip a couple months of rent and you'll go to court. You'll never get a lease again. It's done. Maybe it's not fearful as much as like always trying to get a step ahead mode. Maybe I just don't want to end up being homeless because I don't know. People give up in the city here. They think once you're out, you're out.
Thank you, Maggie. That was Andrea the Dog Walker, straight from the sidewalks, read by Maggie Hoffman. Next up, we'll go into the offices and visit a therapist. Obviously, therapy is a very big part of life in New York City. I was lucky to meet a therapist in the West Village who met with me a few times and spoke incredibly quickly both times, but she didn't exude the anxiety that she talked about from her clients. So let's turn to Erika. Erika Chong Shuch is going to read Deborah Carlson, the therapist. Take it away, Erika.
My clients are not heavily into trauma. It's all anxiety about work, about potential, about whether this is really the person I should be with and whether New York is really where I should be. New York is a focus in the sessions. Like, is it impossible to date in New York? Are all men in New York jerks? Is there no job that will pay me a living wage in New York? I don't know about this for other cities, but for sure in New York, the city plays a big role. New York itself almost becomes like a presence. It takes a certain kind of drive to get to New York. A lot of people will look at New York and say, this is insane. My father, when he first saw my apartment, was just horrified. Like, this is not human. He loves coming here for 2 or 3 days, but the idea that he would actually, as an adult, choose to live in this kind of situation, that takes a certain kind of person. This is the best place you could be dating. You have the opportunity to meet anyone, any night from anywhere around the world, but the city breeds these men that have made a lot of money when they're young. They aren't mature or don't really know what they want and have the pick of all of these fantastic women. What's going to make them settle down with one? I see a lot of single women that are looking to have a partner, a boyfriend or a husband. For many of them, they want a really wonderful career and they want a really wonderful relationship. So the bar is very high. So it might take them a little bit longer, but that struggle and that pursuit will be so much more worthwhile, because then I see those people that kind of knocked it down in college and are going through horrible divorces in their 30s. I have this girl who's a stylist, like top level, has worked with everyone that you can imagine and is so good at what she does. I can even tell by what she wears to our sessions that she has so much going for her. She's funny and beautiful, but instead of taking all that and really feeling a high out of it, she just looks at her dating life and she gets frustrated and depressed. She talks in a way that doesn't match up with what she has going for her. I think a lot of women lose sight of that. They equate success with having a marriage. Is the end game to be happy, or is the end game to just kind of be married? They blame New York. It must be the city. Trust me, the city is involved in almost every session I have. It's constantly in the room in a way that I'm not sure any other city would be, certainly not in the United States. And always talk of moving, moving, moving. All of my clients bring it up at one point or another. You know, what if I could get the hell out of here? Where else could I go to be someplace else? It doesn't have to be so expensive. It doesn't have to be such a rat race, whatever. That's what I feel my clients are really going for. They want to feel some sense of relief from this. And that is a very viable, relieving fantasy to have. One woman I see came to New York with pretty much nothing and has created a very interesting life for herself, married a very nice guy. They have a young daughter, and they're realizing that the kind of life that they want for her, support-wise, family-wise, money-wise, is not here. And so they might have to move out west. That had been a stress in her marriage for the past year. It's feeling like a huge failure for her to leave. There's a certain kind of heartbreak, but then you have to say, well, is it really a failure? You created this fantastic life for yourself. You achieved things that you probably would have never imagined. You're leaving with this accomplishment, with this professional life. Is it really such a heartbreak or a defeat? Or is it maybe for everything there is a season and you have a family and it's kind of time to acknowledge that and put that as a focus first versus living in New York? If you're coming to New York, you are ambitious and you want it all. So you're not just going to be happy with being so fabulous at your job. You're going to want a marriage. You're going to want children. You're going to be sending them to the best private schools for whatever insane amount of money. When you look at it like that, no one will win the game. No one. Why are you even thinking about your life in 22 years? We are not there yet. Just start by appreciating what you've created for yourself in the city, which is an accomplishment in itself.
Thank you so much, Erika. Therapy in the city. I love the city in the room in all the therapy sessions. I love the city as this an idea of a power, a character unto itself that is there with people throughout their lives in New York. We're going to go higher up in the city now. We're going to scale the heights. I was lucky enough one night in Queens to meet Jason Nunez, who is an electrician who scaled the heights of the Empire State Building to rewire the building. And obviously hearing that, I got interested and wanted to hear exactly how one does that and what New York looks like from those heights. So Aaron Landsman is going to come in and take over. Aaron, it's all yours. Thank you.
It's surreal. It's so fucking high. Once you go up to the observation deck, the 86th floor or whatever it is, VIP is 104. You go out and there's a railing this high and you're looking open out over 104. And then you go up another staircase and you're at the dome. That's the physical dome. And it's a submarine door that pops open and then you're physically on the tower. Once you get that wind, your legs start buckling. You got to walk around the dome and a ship ladder that's on the dome to the actual tower. Now that's 16 stories. It starts pretty wide and then it narrows. It's fucking scary. You just go. So the guy with the mustache, it's nothing to him, but you're like, oh man, the wind is gusting. You're like, I'm gonna blow off this thing. Then once you're inside, you're like, I'm good. I'm good. It's so many tubes and everything. The 6-inch RF copper tubes look like steam pipes. I got up to the 16th floor of the tower. Now, once you get up there, it's a platform, a round platform, no railings. You come up the middle. The only thing that's above you is a 25-foot antenna with a beacon, which we changed. And it's pegs. Pegs you actually pull down and you climb the last 25 feet. That's it. You come up the middle of the grating and it's probably 8-9 feet all around, but it's big, but there's no railing and you're on top. You're at 1,500 feet in the air, wind gusting. We did the work in January because it had to be ready for the painters in the summer. 60-mile-an-hour winds, icicles. Dude, icicles on your jacket, everywhere. Your hands, cold, hand warmers. I had 6 pairs of pants on, thermal socks. You took your hand out of the glove, it was instantly almost frozen. But I could see everything of New York. Central Park, lights. You sit there and you're just amazed. but you had a time limit too. There was so much to do. They had to shut off the RF before we went up there. It was 1 o'clock, you had to be up there ready. 1 a.m. ready. Everybody was on the dome right off the top, 1:04, 1 a.m. 1:45, they're shutting everything down. You got to be down by 4. It turns on at 4. You only have that time frame to do the work. First, we decommed, cut off the existing power and started running aluminum. Everything's all galvanized. Actual feeders we'd be cutting and replacing, cut and replacing sections into these boxes. And from the boxes, we would pipe out for the LEDs, so it's a new power source. Everything's a new power source for the LED, and we would put and obstruction lights. It would be so dark, and as we're going, it's just lighting until we're done. And at the end, everything was lit. Every floor would have a work light, a blue LED, you know? Those are obstruction lights only, just so you could see. It was cool. Until the end. You're getting there, and then we're at the top. It's all the red lights. Red obstruction lights for airplanes now. Underneath that metal tower, they had these cones like jelly jars and the beacon up top. The beacon ain't small. That's when I froze. Wasn't cut out for it, man. I was like, I'm up really high. I'm scared of heights. Not scared, but aware. I'm not the, oh, let me look over the edge. No, I'm like, ah! I did the obstruction lights right under the tower, the bridge and the pegs, because you're just climbing pegs now. There's 2 people that went up there, and they were the craziest ones. My partner was on the outside of the tower climbing. It's a metal thing with beams. Now you've got to imagine ship ladders going floor to floor right there. It's very tight. You can't have harnesses. He changed the whole thing, yeah, to LED. It's a whole new fixture. Your adrenaline is pumping so much up there. It's not like you're tired. It's like you're on a roller coaster, but are you gonna get tired? Nah, not so much. You're so into what you're doing because you've got to be focused. They say do not write your name, but everybody wrote their names. People that's been up there did tower work. It's a small group of people that have been up there. My name's up there. I'm sure the mustache guy was up there too. I see it now, the tower. When I was done with it, you look at that thing and like, I fucking did that shit, you know? And my son is like, Daddy, that's the building you did. Yeah, damn right. It lasts for a while. But somebody's gonna be ripping up my shit soon.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Thank you. That was a theme that that recurred a lot when I spent time with the people working in the city. This idea that you did what you could. You worked in the hospitals, you worked in the buildings, you fixed the elevators. You did what you could in your time in New York. You tried to press hard. You tried to leave your mark, but then you had to leave or die or move to Florida. And you knew that someone would be coming after you. And I think that's just the nature of these great entities, these great cities like New York. So thanks. We'll now head to Sandra Shea, who is a dear interviewee. Sandra is a healer, amongst many other things. But a healer in New York City also gets involved in real estate sometimes. And Sandra spoke to me about clearing the city's negative energy in different parts of Manhattan. So Jahmorei Snipes is going to read this section. Thank you so much for doing this, Jahmorei. Take it away.
New York is a small island. It's crazy. It's like Gilligan's Island being built up to the biggest city in the world. There's so many EMFs. There's so much technology, so much electro smog. Everything that's plugged in creates electro smog and cell phone towers and computers and Wi-Fi. All of this makes you physically weaker, which makes you more susceptible to getting sick. It's everywhere, but in Manhattan, it is so intense. I only go into Manhattan for work now. I protect myself energetically. If I'm in a place and it feels terrible to me, I just clear it. That's my way with dealing. If I get on a subway car and it feels awful, I clear it. I get to see people's houses, gorgeous places in New York, which I love. There was an apartment on the Upper West Side, all the way on Riverside Drive, which these people called me in to clear. It would have been this really gorgeous old pre-war apartment with 12-foot ceilings and all these rooms and all of this detail, because I could see what it would look like if it was fixed up. There had been a terrible fire there, really bad. 2 people got killed. The guys who were in there fixing it up, they had to completely do everything over. They refused to work because they felt something there and made them feel really bad and creepy. And they thought something was there, whether the souls of the people who died in the fire, I don't know. They would continue working until the owner of the realtor, or the realtor, whoever, brought someone in to clear it. They called me in and I cleared it. That was my favorite because I could see what that apartment would look like when it wasn't fire damaged. I do this for people who are trying to sell their places or just want their home to feel better. They sense that something's not right, or they're familiar with space clearing, so they want it done because they know the benefits of it. I do this for a lot of realtors when they have a space they can't sell. And then it usually sells very quickly. There was this one apartment a few years ago. It was beautiful, a duplex with a terrace and a whole wall of windows on both floors. It was on and off the market for 7 years and it wouldn't sell. A realtor brought me in and I cleared it. As I was doing the clearing, the realtor got nauseous, which is because she needed healing for one, but also because the vibrations of the energy changed so much so quickly. She couldn't adjust fast enough. That doesn't happen often. But when all that positive energy came in so quickly, it probably created something in her body, maybe her equilibrium, and she was nauseous. She went out into the hallway. She had scheduled someone to look at the apartment right when I left. They bought it. It sold 15 minutes after the clearing. Someone walks into a space, they have an immediate reaction. They feel like, oh, I like this, or I don't like this. They haven't even looked at it. It's because they're reacting to the energy of the place. When I do this for a realtor and you get rid of the negative energy and the low vibration energy, they go into a place already liking it. This apartment makes me feel good. It's basically a 4 or 5 step process. First, I go in and out of every room. It looks like I'm just walking around mumbling to myself. I don't put on a big show like they do on TV. I wear the same thing all the time, khaki pants and a white shirt. I used to wear a lot of necklaces with symbols on them, but I don't do that anymore. I just protect myself from the EMFs. I go into every room and I'm talking to the higher energies, any negative entities, any low vibration energy. There could be beings who aren't in body anymore, but are still hanging around. Or they could be worse. But I don't really like to talk about those, but they do exist. There are creepy things. I don't like to dwell on that because it's just kind of sensationalization. I don't want to feed into that. There are creepy things out there. There were a couple of times when there were super creepy things that if I didn't know what I was doing, I could have been in trouble. These really negative energies feed on fear. You feel them. They feel horrible. I don't see, just feel it. I'm almost glad I don't see it. It feels so horrible. It's very easy to go into fear. It would scare anybody. Sometimes you feel it right when you go in and as you go through. Sometimes it feels so bad in a place, in an entranceway. I do a general clearing. Those old buildings that used to be tenements, terrible energy. More of them are getting cleared. Those places, when people came here, immigrants, there were a lot of hope for something new, but the primary feeling was fear, desperation, being uprooted from your home, a lot of them fleeing. It was just horrible. The conditions there were so horrendous in those areas. Those tenement houses, if they haven't been cleared, they just feel terrible.
Thank you, Jahmorei. Thank you. Speaking the words of Sandra Shea, the healer I spoke to, who goes on in the piece to talk about a very special healing job she was given. She didn't know exactly where she was going in Manhattan. She had an address. And when she showed up, there was a crowd, there was press, there was police, there were Secret Service people, which is when she realized the job was in Trump Tower. It was the day of the New York City primaries, and the space she was clearing was 2 floors beneath Trump, who was at home at the time. And so Sandra, in her piece, goes on to talk about how she looked up and sent healing energy up towards Trump 2 floors above. And that was her deal with the universe, that maybe he would become less hateful. But as she says at the end of the piece, the universe does what the universe does. So thank you, Jahmorei, for those words. We're going to move on out to Queens now. As mentioned, we got to hear from some wonderful actors, and we're hearing from another wonderful actor, Craig Geraghty. And Craig will be actually reading his own words. I met Craig back in 2015 and interviewed him for the book. And I'm so glad that he's a part of it. He'll be reading about his city, about Queens, and about his New York. So take it away, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. When I run, I get to be a part of the entirety of New York City, at least for a little bit, and see all these places. But when you come home at the end of your day, you come back to your little world, and you're part of New York City. Running in the city, you've got people, you're dodging workers, there are lights, constant lights. So I try to run in Central Park or in Astoria Park as much as I can, just so that I don't have to keep stopping and jogging in place and doing all that nonsense. One of my rules, if I hear anybody honk or anybody scream, I always throw my hands up and go, yo, thank you, like they're my personal cheering section. Meanwhile, the guy's probably just honking his horn because the guy in front of him didn't get out of the way fast enough at a green light. But I always throw my hands up and say, thank you. And then they'll yell at me, oh, yeah. Run, Forrest, run. You get that a lot. Today, I was standing out on a corner, and this beautiful woman walks by. She was gorgeous. And these guys in a FedEx van, they go. So at this point, she'd passed, and now they're just looking at me. So I said, oh, thank you very much, guys. And this guy rips his head out and says, no, not you, not you. I'm like, okay, relax. Does it make you gay? Take it easy. You could see it on this guy's face. He had to make eye contact to tell me, no, I wasn't whistling at you. Just for the record, I'll never see you again. I've already forgotten what you look like, but let's get this down. I was not whistling at you, not the guy. Not you. I was being aggressively sexual towards that woman, but definitely not you, okay? Not the guy with the body of an 11-year-old boy with one wet side and one protruding nipple that's really chafed. Now I run in the cemetery a lot. Calvary. I have my grandmother and my grandfather, and now my father and my brother. They're all buried there. So I run there from my house all the way up past the school, past the church, alongside the cemetery. It's a really steep hill. And then I make a right turn under the BQE, and then I make another right turn into the cemetery when the gates are open, and then I just loop around in and out of the loops all day. I always stop and say hello to my grandmother and my grandfather, and it's a beautiful view of Manhattan from there. I run past the school where not only did my mother and father graduate from, out of the 7 of us, 6 of us graduated from there too. I run past the convent where I made my communion. I run past the church where I was baptized, where I made my confirmation, where I graduated from, where some of my brothers got married. My mom and dad got married. My grandparents, my dad, my brother, they were all funeraled out of that church. And I run past the block that my father grew up on, past the block that I grew up on, past the block that my mother grew up on. You see, they grew up a block away from each other, and they only moved about 100 feet. So that's where we grew up. And then, I run past the cemetery, and sometimes I'll ask my mom, hey, Mom, if I were to go tomorrow, do we have a spot for me? And she's like, don't be morbid. But then she says, yeah, we do, though. We do have a spot. See, my parents have never owned anything. They never bought a house. They don't own anything. But they own many plots of cemetery land. We're land rich. I run past the apartment that I share with some of my brothers, And when my brothers moved out of our place and moved into that, and when one of them moved out of there, I moved in. So I run past one of my old houses. I get close to the high school. I taught high school for a couple of years. I get very close to that high school, and whenever I run that way. And then, you know, when you're running across Queens Boulevard, you look to your right, and the Empire State Building is right there. Now, the neighborhood does change, which I have no problem with. Nothing stays the same. And when people say, but it's changed, and they give me that wink, I know what they mean. They're saying it's darker than it was when they grew up there. I met a lady the other day, 70 miles away from Woodside, when I was doing a cooking demonstration. And she says, "Oh, what part of Queens?" I said, "Woodside." And she says, "Oh, I grew up in Woodside." I said, "Oh, great, blah, 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 blah," you know. And she goes right into it. She leans in and she's like, "But it's changed." Like that secret handshake. I'm not a part of that. And I don't want to be a part of that. So we have a ton of new Americans who live in Woodside, right? People always say, they don't know our language. They don't want our culture. And I say, well, maybe they don't, but their kids probably will. And they're like, well, my ancestors came here and they learned to speak the language. Well, your ancestors were Irish, you idiot. So they spoke the language, but they still stayed with their guys. They still hung out with their Irish guys. They started Irish clubs and they only did Irish things. I know Italian guys whose parents came here who still don't speak English, or if they do, very little. Greeks who came here many, many years ago who really don't speak a lot of it. Now, for me, I think it comes down to the fact that, yeah, they might be Greek or Italian or this or that, but they're white. Whereas I think a big part of it is that, well, they look kind of close to me. And I say, well, don't worry about it. First of all, things are gonna change. Second of all, maybe the new people who come here when they're 35 years old are probably more loyal to their home country. I get it. Maybe they don't want to speak the language. Maybe they don't know the language, but their kids will. And that's how America, I think, goes on, is that we take in people, and that through our bad television shows and fast food, we eventually Americanize them. You do become Americanized. Someone's parents come from another country, and you see after X amount of years, the cultural divide that happens between them and their own children. And as years go by, their children start to give back to their parents, and their parents down the road start picking up the American stuff from their children. I think that's America. I think that's the beautiful part of America. In a generation, the Hondurans and the Colombians will be like, oh, Woodside, it's just not the same. It will change. Now, I wish that we had more thriving businesses here. I think eventually we will. I think we're in a turnover right now. That's the first thing you saw when you come through the harbor, was bring us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And now it's like, last one in, shut the door. In my little world here, I try to embrace it as much as I can. I try to shop over at Rico Pan because it got the best goddamn empanadas I've ever had in my life. I have a supermarket by my house. I'm the only person in there who speaks English, but they have fish swimming around live right in front of me. The prices are great, and we communicate through smiles. The fabric of America, the things that make us this country, we're stripping them away. The idea of let's make America great again. Well, then we should be more welcoming, because that is what made us great in the first place. You know, we should stand up and say to tyrants around the world, if you mistreat your ethnic minorities, your religious minorities, they're okay here. That's what New York, and especially New York, has always been about. That's why people hate New York. That's why people from around this country hate New York. Oh, it's so fucking, you know, people say to me, oh, New York, it's like a foreign country. Yeah, we've always been. That's the deal. And it blows my mind that the word can be denigrated, you know? Sanctuary. What is bad about sanctuary? You know, come to New York. I'm on a train the other day and I look around and I see all these different colors and all these different shapes, styles, fashions, whatever. I love it. That is New York. That's my city.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
to
you,
all
Craig.
these incredible actors. As you can see, so many different voices in the book, beautifully portrayed here tonight. I know we're speaking to a vacuum, but I hope all of you out there have appreciated this taste of the book. So thank you again. Big round of applause for our actors here tonight. I guess we'll stick around for a little bit longer. We're at an hour, so we have time for about 5 minutes of questions if anyone would like to ask them. Chelsea, if you want to take over.
Yeah, of course. So we've got a question here from Liz. They ask, there are so many stories of New York that have been told, multitudes of folks who have shared these stories in various projects. How did you know there were so many left to share?
Good question. I just sort of put my faith in the city, and I think New York is definitely a place that you can put your faith into. As the street photographer I spoke to said, it's a constantly generous place. It is unlike anywhere else. You are constantly being given things by the city, and because I was in the business of speaking to people, I knew that that it would provide, and it did. I was introduced to extraordinary human beings, some of whose words you've heard here tonight.
And then similarly, Jared asks, how did you find your interviewees?
It's a kind of long and slogging process. It's a lot of cold calls. It's a lot of research. I have a list of verbs that I always use that can be applied to New York. So cutting New York, cleaning New York, policing New York. In Craig's case, running New York, because we initially talked about running the New York City Marathon. So the verbs gave me something to aim for every day when I got up, because without them, it would have been too much of a daunting experience.
And Allison asks, when you think of all the people you spoke with and your book, who comes first to mind and why?
Well, I think some of the voices you've heard here tonight, along with a few others, some of the people I'm still friends with, still speak to. There's a great interviewee in the book who's become a dear friend, Elliot Carter. I don't know if he's out there tonight. I hope he is. And I spoke to Elliot about recycling New York, because for years, Elliot picked up cans all over Manhattan, and his life story was emblematic for me of a kind of resilience, a sort of smaller type of resilience, not like the big ticket resiliences like Hurricane Sandy, but a smaller resilience where someone finds a way to lift themselves out of homelessness and poverty and sleeping on the A train. He's an incredible person, and I was very, very lucky to become friends with him. He's still very dear to me now today.
Sam asks, you've written books about both London and New York. Was there a difference that struck you about the cities and their people, or similarities?
There were some differences in terms of just velocity, it seems, velocity and self-mythology. Londoners are a bit more reticent. In New York, there was no hesitation. We were into the stories right away. And it felt, as I think I say in the introduction, like people were mythologizing as they went along. They were making up these great stories about their lives. They were becoming the people that they wanted to become. And I think that was one of the other themes of the book, is that New York is just this power that will uplift some, it will crush others, but it is such a power to be involved with. And I saw that many times over the course of my years there.
Liz asks, how many tiny notebooks did you fill up working on this project?
I used a lot of tiny notebooks. I think there was about 40. I have to say too, I'm just looking at the comments, and Frank, whose voice we heard straight off the bat, read by Hubert, wrote in the comments in the chat to say, that was fantastic read, sounded just like me. Unbelievable, thank you. So there you go, Hubert.
We've got time for one last question here. Scott would like to know, I'm going to paste the buy link in the chat one more time. Reminder for folks that if you place your order online by March 27th, you can also get a free poster mailed to you separately. Scott would like to know where people outside of North America can order New Yorkers that best supports you, Craig, and your publisher.
Always go independent. Please, 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 anytime you're buying any type of book these days, support your independent bookstores in whatever country you're in. They need your help, just as a lot of different industries need your help these days. So just find someone. They'll be so thankful, and we writers are so thankful to be supporting them too. So go independent.
Thank you so much, Craig, and thank you to all of tonight's readers, to Norton, to everyone who came out tonight and shared this space for conversation and connection, and for New York with us. Again, a reminder that you can order the book online at greenlightbookstore.com, and if you order online by March 27th for in-store pickup or for shipping anywhere within the US, you can get a free poster. You can also shop for the book if you're local to Brooklyn in our stores. We're open noon to 7 daily. And there's also a question in the Q&A about where you can find the recording of this event afterwards. It'll be up on our YouTube channel, Greenlight Bookstore, within the next few days. So keep an eye out there and on our social channels for when that is ready. Thank you so much again, everyone. It was such a pleasure to host you all tonight, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Please do head over to the site and read the bios for each of our wonderful actors and learn about their great work. Thanks to each one of them.
Good night, everybody.